It's time for the real Jonathan Smith Show. This is Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
What's going on? It's the real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Hopefully you had a nice weekend. Hopefully if you're in your car, you were safely driving around. Thank you to everyone who's out there clearing off the roads, because as someone who is not from the Midwest and hates the snow, this is my absolute nightmare. The last time it snowed like this, I totaled my truck. So, big shout out to everyone who's out there cleaning off the roads. If you're watching at home, you can watch on YouTube, Twitter. You can also stream us live on that Indy Sports Ticket app. I just greatly appreciate you tuning in on what is a great day for me, but for Colts fans, I mean, it's just absolutely brutal. The Colts finished their season with a win yesterday, 26-23 over the Jacksonville Jaguars, which was the worst possible outcome because I firmly believe that if the Colts had lost that game, the chances of Chris Ballard and Shane Steichen being fired would have gone up exponentially. But they won, so they are back for another year because that is the standard around the great city of Indianapolis. If you go 8-9, 9-8, which is average, then you get to keep your job. I personally thought that they'd finish at 10-7, so got that wrong, but after watching this team for 4 weeks, through the first 4 weeks of the season, 8-9 makes sense. Like, this record for the Indianapolis Colts feels correct. Now, sometimes teams will finish with better or worse records than they should. For example, the Rams don't feel like a 10-7 team, right? They feel like they should have gone like 11-6, 12-5, but they had some injuries early. The Chiefs don't feel like a 15-2 team. They felt like they probably should have gone like 12-5, right? They snuck out with some tough wins there late. But the Colts feel like they should be 8-9 for multiple reasons. Let's start with the quarterback, the most important position on the field. Anthony Richardson missed 6 games this year. In the 11 that he played in, he wasn't great. There were some really fun flashes. That Jets game will live on forever in the minds of Colts fans. Okay, but he clearly needs to get better, completing 48% of your passes on, just under 7 yards per attempt for only 165 yards a game. He only threw 8 touchdowns. He threw 12 picks. That's just not good enough as a passer to last in the NFL. It's not. Okay, now to his credit, he did run the football pretty well. A tick under 500 yards on the year, averaged 6 yards a carry, ran for 6 touchdowns. That's nice. But with the back issue that he's had since 8th grade, which is still incredible to me that Chris Ballard drafted somebody who's had a back issue since 8th grade, it is imperative that he be able to win from the pocket. And he is far from being able to do that. He can push the ball down the field, which is nice. I like it when my quarterbacks can do that. But the down-to-down consistency has not been there. He has to be better at that. I have, said repeatedly that this Indianapolis Colts roster isn't very good, and I still firmly believe that. But if you go by position group, you can make a pretty strong case that the best position group on this Indianapolis Colts team are the wide receivers, which we will talk about later on in the show. And with a pretty solid group of receivers, Anthony Richardson was not very good. That has to improve if Shane Steichen and Chris Ballard want to find a way to go 8-9 or 9-8 again next year and keep their jobs. Now, another major issue and the fall guy for this year is the genius that is Gus Bradley, who just continued his epic run of bad seasons of coaching defensive football. The Colts finished the season 29th in yards allowed, 26th in points allowed, 19th in red zone touchdowns allowed, 31st in third down defense. And this was all with impeccable turnover luck. The Colts were 8th in the NFL this year, tied for 8th in the NFL this year in turnovers forced per game. They took the football away more than, a lot of other teams. They were in the top 10. When you were 8th in forcing turnovers, you should not be 8-9. Of the 10 teams in the NFL that led the league in forcing turnovers. The Colts were the only team that did not have a winning record. And they were one of two teams, the other one being the Bengals, that did not make the playoffs. When you have turnover luck, because that's what turnovers are in the NFL, a lot of it is luck. Okay, the volatility of those numbers year in and year out prove that. When you have turnover luck to the level that the Colts did this year, you should win way more games than what the Colts did. And part of that is the lack of defense. Part of that is the inconsistency from Anthony Richardson and really the offense as a whole. Okay, the Colts, oh man, this defense. When you force that many turnovers, you should hold your opponents to way less points than the 25.5 that the Colts gave up per game this season. Okay, 6 of the top 10 teams in turnovers forced were also top 10 in points allowed. The Bengals ranked below the Colts in points allowed, and they were also top 10 in turnovers forced. They were 26th. The Colts were 25th. The next closest team to the Texans that was top 10 in turnovers, they were 16th. They were in pretty average defense in terms of points allowed. Like, there was absolutely no excuse whatsoever for the Colts defense to be this bad with this level of turnover luck. Gus Bradley needs to go, and I do believe that will happen. I'm still waiting on that news to break because it should break any minute now. Okay? He clearly needs to go. A lot of these players need to go. A lot of these players aren't going anywhere, though, because they're Chris Ballard bred guys, right? And so I fully expect for Gus Bradley to be fired this offseason. He is the scapegoat, clearly, obviously. Like, he has to be. And, the Colts once again find themselves in a spot where they're incredibly average 8-9 finish, and they're running it back again, baby. Let's bring back Chris Ballard for year 9. And when the game was over, Joe Flacco had to go to the podium and answer questions, probably for the final time as a Colt. And Joe Flacco was asked how close the Colts are to making the playoffs. And he gave a fantastic answer. Here it is.
There's a ton of plays you could probably look at and say, you could probably pick 5 plays and say, that's how close we are. But then you could also probably do the same thing in the other direction and say, but yeah, we could have, there's always that back and forth. There's a reason that, you kind of finish around this area. I think when you ultimately just become better, then those things start to go in your favor, because if you looked at it right now, there's just probably a lot of 50-50 things. For the one that we could have had, there's another one that we couldn't have had. So we just need to change that balance a little bit. And the only way to really do that is to get a little bit better. I think it's a lot like a lot of stats and all those things that are brought up today. I think you can kind of manipulate it into saying, oh, we were so close, or, oh, we weren't, however you want to put it, we weren't that far away. But it's being able to look at the different things and the ins and outs of those and really dissect what the issue was. That's the thing with analytics these days. I think, especially when you're, 8-9? When you're 8-9, there's probably a ton of spots where you could look and convince yourself that we were almost there. I don't necessarily think that's the right mindset. I don't think we should be trying to trick ourselves into thinking that we're almost there. I think we should acknowledge, yeah, we are almost there, but we're not there. And I think when you acknowledge that, you free yourself up to get better and take that next step.
Joe Flacco right there answering the question of how close are the Colts to the playoffs. I love what he said in the middle, where he was like, look, you can take 5 plays and said that if they went the other way, that you would be in the playoffs. And, you can come up with numbers and stats to support the idea that you're close. And look, man, it's almost like he's been here for 20 years, because that's exactly what Chris Ballard and the rest of this coaching staff is about to do. But he's exactly right. The only way to not be 8-9 or 9-8 again is to get better. Okay. And we all know what's coming. We're about to get the Chris Ballard press conference, right? Where he sits down and, he tries to turn up the charm and be like, you know what? I hear you guys. I'm disappointed as well. I'm just, we're so close. We're going to hear that the Colts are so close so many times this offseason, right? We're running everything back. We're running ESPN talking heads, calling the Colts a sleeper. We're doing all of it, okay? But you know that phrase, we're so close, those three words are going to be muttered several times. And when you hear it said that the Colts are so close, this is the stat that I expect to follow. The Colts played in 13 one-score games this year. They went 8-5 in those games. And what you're going to hear is, the ball just bounced our way, and 2 of those 5 losses, then we'd be in the playoffs. If Jonathan Taylor hadn't dropped the football against the Broncos, then we might be in the playoffs, right? Like those are the phrases that we are going to hear repeatedly. And I'm already sick of it. I had to go through it last year, and I've only been here 1 year. I'm not dumb, though. You aren't either. You watched the games. I watched the games. And the Colts are nowhere close to competing for the Super Bowl. They aren't. And sure, we can talk about playoffs, and you're going to hear people say ignorant things like, like once you make the playoffs, anything can happen. That's what people are going to say. The Houston Texans made the playoffs. And you know what nobody is saying right now? Watch out for the Houston Texans. Anything can happen. No, they're all like, hey, probably Chiefs, Ravens, Bills. They're going to come out of the AFC. No one's looking at the NFC and being like, let me think. The Buccaneers, 10-7, kind of old, scrappy bunch. I like them. Anything can happen. No one's saying that. Like that is just not the reality. Okay? We are about to watch the playoffs, and the Colts are not anywhere close to the best teams in the NFL. And this is after 8 years of Chris Ballard. Sure, they're close to the Broncos, right? Like if Jonathan Taylor doesn't drop that football, they probably win that game on the road going away. They're pretty close to the Texans every time they play each other. It's a nice, good, close-knit battle. Probably not much worse than the Buccaneers. Probably not much worse than the Steelers. But that should not be the standard. That should never be the standard at the franchise that Peyton Manning was a part of, that won Super Bowls. Okay, that should be the standard. It should be Super Bowls. And the Colts aren't anywhere close to that. They aren't anywhere close. Now, the close losses might tell you that they are. Those but the blowout losses to the Bills where they got boat raced, and to the Lions where they managed to score 6 points, and the Giants, the awful Giants, one of the worst teams in the NFL. They ran Drew Lock out there and hung 45 on this Colts team. This team is nowhere close. And we've ran it back with Chris Ballard so many times now that Chris Ballard is no longer the issue. The issue is clearly Jim Irsay. I've got a lot of theories on Jim Irsay. I've got a lot of theories on why he's bringing back Chris Ballard and Shane Steichen. I think part of it has to do with the money. He doesn't want to pay Frank Reich, who's under contract until 2026, and Chris Ballard and Shane Steichen, plus a new general manager, plus a new head coach. I don't think he wants to fork out the money for that. I also think that there's a decent chance. Look, I don't know if you saw the video of him after the Colts game, but he's still on a scooter. Okay, he's got a lot of issues health-wise. Part of me thinks that he's just not healthy enough to conduct a search for a new general manager. I think he's just too busy dealing with his health. Okay, and look, he's not going to pass this franchise over until he's on his deathbed. He's still calling all the shots. And I just don't think that he's healthy enough to fire Chris Ballard and to then do an entire thorough general manager search. He wrote a letter yesterday to Colts fans, and it's rich. It's incredible. I'm going to read it when we come back, and I'm going to talk about the future of the Colts and what we all know is going to happen this next season.
The best takes, stories, and entertainment. It's The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
The Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Hopefully you had a nice weekend. Hopefully you're staying safe, driving through the snow. It's brutal out there, so stay safe. Our beloved owner, Jim Irsay, wrote quite the letter to fans yesterday, and it's just, it's incredible. Oh man, he's disappointed. He said, as we close out the season, I can't tell you how disappointed I am that we failed to win the AFC South for the 10th year in a row and earn a playoff appearance. There's a high standard in this city for our team, and anyone who steps on the field wearing the horseshoe, that's the case, then I don't know why Chris Ballard is still employed. The expectation is to win our division. Haven't done that in a decade. And compete for championships. Haven't done that in longer than a decade. Just being on the doorstep of the playoffs is not the standard I expect, nor what you deserve. We understand that and always accept that challenge. Believe me, I know you share my impatience and frustration. Jim, ain't no way, brother. It's 10 years of this. If you were really impatient, Chris Ballard would have been gone 5 years ago, okay? I know you invest your time, energy, and money into the Colts every year. More than anything, we want to reward you with division titles and playoff runs, and we've fallen short in the most painful ways possible. But things evolve quickly in the NFL from week to week and season to season, so I will never stop being optimistic that this team can take the next step. I think I speak for all fans when I say that I don't think anyone's optimistic about this Colts team taking the next step. If they were going to do that, it probably would have been, sometime within the last decade, but, whatever. Then Jim Irsay continues on to say, I've been evaluating our entire operation, and I believe in Chris Ballard and Shane Steichen and our collective ability to make improvements needed to take us to the next level in 2025. I know fans want an immediate change in leadership and will be disappointed. That means we all have a lot to prove. So we'll be back to get to work. So we'll get back to work and keep doing what we can to earn your support and make you proud to be a Colts fan. Yeah, that's a load of baloney, Jim. You are not impatient. If you were, then these guys would still not be employed. The Bears, Panthers, Jets, Browns, Giants, and Raiders are arguably the worst ran organizations in the NFL. And I believe that the Colts have now officially entered that tier with them. And they honestly might be below them because Jim Irsay and Chris Ballard and the rest of the people that help run the Colts have simply sat idly by while the Colts have pedaled in mediocrity for the last decade, with the exception of the 1 year that they were quarterbacked by Phillip Rivers. Meanwhile, these other franchises have at least done something. Like the Bears, they have a franchise quarterback and a soon-to-be new head coach. The Panthers have a young head coach that I like, and Bryce Young might actually be good. The Jets have at least tried to be good by going out and signing free agents and bringing in Aaron Rodgers and doing everything that they can to end this drought. They just got in their own way, but at least they're taking some swings. The Browns tried to be good. They hired Kevin Stefanski, an excellent head coach, and they took a huge risk on Deshaun Watson, which didn't pan out. But guess what? They at least took a swing. They at least went for it. The Colts don't even go for it anymore. And then the Giants and Raiders are about to draft franchise quarterbacks, and they drafted arguably the two best offensive weapons from last year's NFL draft class in Malik Neighbors and Brock Bowers. Meanwhile, the Colts are just like, hey, what's up, guys? We're going to go 9-8 again. Watch us do it. The Colts remind me of the earth. My wife is a science teacher, which is cool for me because she just gives me these awesome facts about space. We went to the, oh my gosh, what's that? The museum in DC, all about space. We went there. Anyway, it was an absolute blast, and you should go. But the Colts are like the earth. Okay, they spin on their Chris Ballard centered axis of drafting average edge rushers, elite offensive guards, and they avoid making a quarterback decision until far too late. So this Chris Ballard, centered axis just spins and spins and spins, and it does the same thing, and it rotates around the mediocrity sun, which is a 9-8 or 8-9 record. And every 365 days, we make a full rotation doing the exact same things, celebrating the exact same things, like drafting the best edge rusher in the draft in the first round and, all of that good stuff. And we talk about horseshoe guys at about the same point every single year. And it's great. You can insert embarrassing loss to a backup quarterback here. And it's just the same thing every single year. All right. We just, continue to revolve around this mediocrity sun that is 9-8 or 8-9. And every 365 days, we make this full rotation, and we have made the full rotation. And it's awesome because this is the time of the year where the Colts celebrate the year of mediocrity by wearing party hats that say we're so close. And it's great. That is actually the new slogan for the Indianapolis Colts. It's not we compete for championships or anything like that. It's just we're so close. Okay? And then the revolution around the sun of mediocrity begins again, and that's where we are. We're starting back up, guys. We're about to be talking drafts and how we're going to draft this guy, and he's going to be a game changer, and it's going to be great. And we're once again, we're going to get this press conference where they're going to make claims about how Anthony Richardson's gotten better, right? Or how this new draft class is really going to help the organization, and it's going to be just fantastic. Next year's the year because we are so close. And as close as we are, we're probably just going to wind up 9-8 or 8-9 in 365 days. And I'm going to bust out this amazing party hat again. And it's going to be great. Okay, that's where we're going to be. Unless Chris Ballard defies the odds and he puts together an insane draft class. And because both these things I think have to happen, Anthony Richardson has to improve dramatically. Okay, where the Colts are at right now is the least surprising thing ever. Okay, it's not surprising at all. Like, this is just who the Colts are, and I think part of this has to do, or a lot of it has to do, with Jim Irsay and the decisions that he has made. Okay. I think the reason why Chris Ballard's back and Shane Steichen's back is because they don't want to pay Shane Steichen, Chris Ballard, Frank Reich, who's under contract until 2026, and the new hires. I think part of this has to do with Jim Irsay's health. Dude's dealing with a lot right now. He's probably not healthy enough to deal with interviewing new coaches and general managers. Okay. Now, once again, Chris Ballard could put together an incredible draft class and potentially save his job. The Colts need depth at running back. They need offensive line depth. They need an upgraded safety corner and linebacker. They need a legitimate dominant edge rusher. And I just don't know how the Colts get there without the perfect offseason, which the Colts can't have because of Chris Ballard's reluctancy to dip into free agency. Okay, Kevin Potts is going to join the show at 11, and we're going to talk about some of the draft stuff. We're mainly, though, going to discuss the Colts, and we'll probably touch on the playoffs a little bit as well. So in order for the Colts to have a chance next year at making the playoffs, they would have to draft a good running back, which isn't hard. Those guys grow on trees, and there are a lot of good running backs in this draft. They'd have to hit free agency, which isn't going to happen. And they'd have to add some guaranteed depth on the offensive line. Then they'd have to hit on picks at safety, corner, linebacker. And then Leatu Latu would have to drastically improve. I would argue he had a solid rookie season when you look at some of the advanced numbers like pass rush win rate and pressure applied on the quarterback and all that. But he didn't live up to the standard that Chris Ballard set for him as the, quote, best pass rusher in the draft. What's crazy is that all of that could happen, okay? The Colts could have this amazing draft class. Leatu Latu could come back a stud. But it wouldn't matter if Anthony Richardson doesn't get better and if he doesn't grow up, okay? And if he doesn't stay healthy. I mean, like that is where, that is what the Colts are relying on, okay? Like, he has to get better and grow up because the Colts can do everything else right. But if he doesn't figure it out, none of this stuff will matter. Okay. And this is one of those moments where I'm thinking about Chris Ballard and I'm like, geez, I kind of feel bad for the guy. I could never be an NFL general manager for a lot of reasons. Okay. I'm too handsome, way too smart. I don't think that the NFL would allow it. But I would never want to be in a position where I have fought incredibly hard to obtain something that's coveted by many people. And then for the future of my career to rest in the hands of a 22-year-old with a lot of maturity issues. Because that's where Chris Ballard's at right now. Okay, the fate of his career, because most of the time, not all the time, there are a few exceptions, but most guys who get hired on as general managers, if they get fired, they don't get another job being a general manager. Okay, so Anthony Richardson, my guy, you better get going. You better figure it out, because this is the last year of the Shane Steichen, Chris Ballard, Anthony Richardson experiment. Honestly, it may not last the full season. It may not. I fully expect at this point. Actually, I don't know if I fully expect it. I would not be surprised. Better wording there. If the Colts took a quarterback in the second or third round. Think Quinn Ewers, Carson Beck, somebody like that. That would not surprise me in the slightest, because obviously Anthony Richardson has struggled a ton, and I have sat here and I have defended him because the tools are out of this world, and he made some really good flashes and all of those things. Okay, but he can't stay on the field, and like I said, to open the show, flashes are not good enough. You have to be consistently good from down to down. Okay, so he's got to figure it out if Steichen and Ballard and all these guys want to keep their jobs. Also, last thing on Ballard, and then I'll move to Shane Steichen. I think I need a new definition of what a horseshoe guy is. Okay? Because if Ballard's all about these high character guys who are going to come in the building and take care of business and relationships and all those things, if that is what Chris Ballard is about, then why do two of his most recent draft picks, important ones as well, Anthony Richardson and A.D. Mitchell, why do they have character and maturity issues? That just doesn't make any sort of sense to me. Honestly, I don't see this getting any better, like many other Colts fans. Why would it after 9 years? Now, where things could get better is with Shane Steichen. Okay? He's only been a head coach for 2 years, right? He's still growing, learning, hopefully, and doing all those things. Look, I didn't think he was going anywhere. I think he knew that he wasn't going anywhere. Jim Irsay likes him way too much, and Jim Irsay doesn't pay enough attention to the Colts to make any sort of adjustments. Okay, here is Shane Steichen after the game, clearly not worried about his job.
Yeah, we'll have those ongoing conversations. Obviously, I love being the head football coach here. Love everything about it. Love this team. Obviously, we'll have an evaluation process, early on this week. But I'm excited to be here.
Good old Shane Steichen. Yeah, he's excited to be here. He wasn't worried at all about his job. Okay, Jim Irsay came out, what felt like right after the game was over, and was like, yeah, we're rolling with these dudes. Okay, he knew he wasn't going anywhere. He sounded so incredibly unbothered, which I figured he wasn't going anywhere because Jim Irsay called him Don Shula before the season started. But he has to get better as well. Okay, Shane Steichen, no more crazy trick plays in big spots. Okay, no more not having your best players on the field in big moments. No more trying to save Jonathan Taylor until late in the year. Fun fact, if you win a lot of games early, you can do what the Chiefs did yesterday, and you can rest Jonathan Taylor before the playoffs start. Okay? No more saving Anthony Richardson. The best part of his game has been his legs. Run him more. Okay? He has to get players to buy in. He has to get Zaire Franklin to stop saying stupid things on his podcast. He has to get Zaire Franklin to stop walking over to Pat McAfee's booth and fake shaking all of their hands because none of them were there on Sunday. Don't know if you saw that video or not, but incredibly embarrassing for Zaire Franklin to allow Pat McAfee and those guys to live rent-free in his head. Okay? Shane Steichen has to find a way to make the players on this team better because Chris Ballard is not going to do that. Okay? And look, I feel like he can do it because I saw him do it this year with Alec Pierce. Here's Shane Steichen after the game talking about Alec Pierce's developments from last year to this year.
I mean, really improved. I'll tell you what, the plays he made down the field, obviously a big one there, 3rd and 10 in the overtime, just a little sideline play to him, going up and getting it. Made some big times and clutch moments for us this year.
Shane Steichen right there talking about Alec Pierce and his improvement. And he's exactly right. He made big plays all year long, right? And he got open over the top. And Alec Pierce ended up having the best year of his career for 2 reasons. First and foremost, because Shane Steichen figured out a way to get him the ball doing the thing that he does well, and that's run deep. Okay? Shane Steichen has to find a way to do that for the rest of these players. I don't know what Shane Steichen did the last month of the season, but that is the best Jonathan Taylor played all year. He did something, I don't know what. Maybe it's because Ryan Kelly got healthy. I don't know. Also, bring him back, please. I don't know what he did, but he figured out a way to get the best version of Jonathan Taylor in 4 games that they really needed to win, right? Against the Giants, the defense didn't show up. So, whatever. But he figured out a way to get Alec Pierce to play his best ball. He's got to figure out a way to do that with Anthony Richardson and the rest of these players. The second reason why Alec Pierce had an amazing year this year, once again, the best year of his career, Alec Pierce put the work in over the offseason. He did. He worked his butt off. I remember him doing interviews during training camp and being asked, they took A.D. Mitchell, he's potentially going to take your spot. How do you feel about that? And, because we're all about feelings here in Indianapolis. And he was just kind of yeah, they took the guy. That's fine. That's more depth behind me. Let's go. And he went out and he put together the best season of his career. So players have to buy in. Shane Steichen's got to find a way to get the best out of these guys. They need to fire Gus Bradley and hire a defensive coordinator that's actually good at their job. And they got to hope and pray that Chris Ballard can get incredibly lucky and have an impeccable draft class. And they also have to hope that Anthony Richardson grows up and figures out a way to play consistent football. Speaking of consistency, the Indiana Hoosiers, 12-3. It's almost like they're really talented and they're really good because of that. Indiana with another win yesterday. We're going to talk a little bit of hoops when we come back. Indiana with the win. Purdue looks good. Pacers back to 500. They're rolling as well, 8-3 in their last 11. And then Kevin Potts joining the show here in about 23 minutes to talk Colts, NFL playoffs, and a whole lot more. Big show today here on Indy's Sports Ticket. We'll talk a little IU hoops when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
Unadulterated sports talk with unfiltered takes. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? The real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Thanks for tuning in no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket, if you want to subscribe there and watch the live stream. Twitter, you can follow me there at _ Jonathan Smith. You can watch the live stream there as well. You should also follow the station at Ticket 1430. And then maybe you're listening live on the radio. If you are and you're driving around, be safe, be careful. Because it's wet out there. And yeah, anyway, Indiana, the Hoosiers rolling. We're gonna take a little break from the mediocrity of the Indianapolis Colts. They're mediocre, but the takes are never that here on the real Jonathan Smith Show. Indiana basketball team with another win. It's almost like they're really good. It's almost like they're incredibly talented. Okay? Indiana appears to be better, than what people were assuming earlier in the year when, the season was over and Mike Woodson needed to be fired and all that stuff. Remember, they were terrible. They lost a couple games in a different time zone, and people freaked out. You know who else did that? UConn. You know who else is really good? UConn. Hopefully, you Indiana Hoosiers fans have calmed down just like a little bit now, okay? All right? Because this Indiana basketball team is good. They are 12-3. They are 3-1 in conference. They've won 4 in a row. They've won 8 of their last 9. Okay? This is a really good team. They just won 2 Big Ten games without Malik Reneau, their leading scorer. They just beat Penn State, a really good basketball team, on the road. Do you know who lost to Penn State on the road? Gave up like 81 points? Purdue. Okay? You know who looked really good in that game yesterday? Indiana. They come out in the first half. They struggle to score, and then the second half, they just go crazy. They're scoring all sorts of points, scoring from all over the floor. Omar Ballo, dominating. Okay? Miles Rice continues to play well. Trey Galloway continues to, he's a really good passer. I think that's been the most impressive thing that he's done this year. He's passing the ball well. He's not turning it over. Omar Ballo, bar incident, doesn't play against Winthrop. People are going crazy. Mike Woodson sat him down. Omar Ballo's been great ever since. 17-12 against Rutgers. 25-13 yesterday against Penn State on the road. Mackenzie Mbako, the most talented offensive player on this team. Don't get it wrong. When he hit that little turnaround fadeaway 20 feet from the bucket with 2 seconds left on the shot clock in the second half, I was like, geez, that dude's crazy. That guy's going to play in the NBA because he's 6'8" with long arms and he can shoot it. He had 20 yesterday against Penn State, and he had 16 against Rutgers. And after the game against Nebraska, that's kind of where everyone went crazy, right? Indiana sucks, all that good stuff. Remember, Mackenzie Mbako picked up 2 fouls in 30 seconds in that game in the first half. And so he didn't play at all in the first half. And he didn't play a ton in the second half either, right? So, maybe if he doesn't get into foul trouble so early against Nebraska, they wind up winning that game. Okay, either way, my point is that Indiana is a good college basketball team. They are going to compete with every single team in the Big Ten. Mike Woodson is doing an excellent job, and they'll probably win again on Wednesday. Okay, when they play USC. That's on the road. I believe that's on the road. If it is, it's always tough when you got to travel that far, but USC's not as talented as Indiana is this year. Okay, the one thing I have seen from Indiana fans that are a lot happier as of late, I wonder why. I've seen them say one thing that's just fundamentally wrong, and I would like to correct it. I saw several tweets and comments suggesting that Indiana's better without Malik Reneau, and that's one of the most absurd things I've heard this year. We're only 6 days in, so competition's not great, but that's pretty absurd. Okay? Langdon Hatton, backup big. He's fine for 8 minutes a night. Plays hard. Sets good screens. Tries to rebound. Tries to defend the rim. Like I said, just plays really hard. But that guy's not. He's fine. He's not an elite Big Ten player. He's not that at all. And Malik Reneau, if he's in during those minutes instead of Langdon Hatton, like Indiana would have been better in those minutes. Okay? He provides, Reneau does, the Hoosiers with much needed depth in the front court. And he gives them another high-level scorer. That is what Malik Reneau is. He's their leading scorer. I believe he led them in scoring last year. It was him or Khalil Ware. He was a really good player last year. But most importantly, Malik Reneau gives the Hoosiers more options. Okay? Because that is, I think, one of the most important things to have in basketball. Multiple lineups, being able to mix and match and figure out how to match up with whoever you're playing against. Okay? Look, I am Mr. Indiana needs to shoot the ball better. Okay, that was my big thing last year. We tracked their record when they shot over 38% from three. They were 9-1 or something crazy like that. Okay, and Indiana shot the ball much better in these last two games, in part because of the spacing on the floor without Malik Reneau in. Okay, but they need Malik Reneau because he gives them options. If they need to play two bigs, they can do that when they have Malik Reneau. And they're going to have to do that because they're going to play Michigan here at some point, who's going to run 2 7-footers out onto the floor. Okay? And if you're playing a team that's going to run 2 7-footers out there, you need two big guys. And Langdon Hatton, I like you. You play hard. You rebound. You set good screens. But I would much prefer Malik Reneau be out there. Okay? If they want to go small, they can do that with Malik Reneau. You can let him play a small ball 5. He's a big guy who's a pretty decent passer, right? So if he's on the floor and Omar Ballard was on the bench, the offense, I think, would actually be even better because of Malik Reneau's ability to post up and score, but also because of his ability to face up and pass the basketball really well. Honestly, I think Indiana's offense would have been even better against Penn State with him instead of Omar Ballard because he's in shape, he can actually play at a faster pace. And once again, the passing. He just gives them many, many options in a deep Big Ten that they wouldn't have without him. Okay? Look, Indiana needs Malik Reneau because they don't want to wind up like this year's version of the New York Knicks, where they only play 6 or 7 players. Okay? They need the depth that Malik Reneau gives them. Okay? Now, look, these guys are in college, and they should be in shape, and they should be able to play for forever. But Omar Ballard had to play the final 6 minutes of the game yesterday with 4 fouls. Okay? If he had fouled out, Indiana would have been in some deep doo-doo. Okay? The lineup flexibility, the depth, and the scoring that Malik Reneau gives them is very important. Okay? So, show Malik Reneau a little bit of love. Also, show Omar Ballard some as well. If you see him out at night at a bar, buy that guy a drink. He's playing really well. Speaking of playing well, Purdue, they tacked on another win yesterday. Another blowout win, to be a little more accurate. They blew out Minnesota. They blew out Northwestern yesterday. They were Purdue. They were what this Purdue team is. They shot really well from 3, 40%, 8 of 20. Brayton Smith had 22 points, 7 assists, and 5 turnovers. Way too many turnovers, but thankfully, his teammates didn't turn the basketball over at the same rate. Okay, 11 turnovers as a team. That's a pretty decent number. Not a great one. Not a terrible one either, though. Okay, Trey Kaufman-Renn didn't go crazy, right? But he still had 12. He was pretty efficient, 6 of 10 from the floor. CJ Cox, freshman, started his second game in a row, which I like, right? It gives him a little more length, gives him a little more athleticism. Gives them, most importantly, a secondary ball handler. Okay, I like Fletcher Lawyer, solid player, but if he dribbles the ball more than twice, I get nervous. Okay, he had 12 points. He led them in rebounds. This is CJ Cox, not Fletcher Lawyer. He had 12 points. He led them in rebounds with 8. Okay, Matt Painter is one of the best coaches in the country. Okay, and he's going to continue to win games. I just don't think that they're a Final Four team again this year. Maybe they're a Sweet 16 team, but I think Final Four, Elite 8, that feels like a long shot right now. But once again, It's Matt Painter. If he figures out a way for this team to be even better, I don't think anyone would be surprised in the slightest on that front. Just going to continue rolling along here with hoops. The Indiana Pacers look really good. They do. Okay, I think I'm going to do a full Pacers thing either tomorrow or Wednesday. Tony East, he's going to join the show on Wednesday, and we're going to talk Pacers. But I did want to mention that they are rolling right now. They're back to 500. They're 8-3 in their last 11. Tyrese Halliburton's playing at an all NBA level once again. Over his last 5 games, he's averaging 25 points, 9 assists, and less than 1 turnover. He's shooting 36% from 3, which is a number that could be better, right? But he looks really good once again. He looks like he is back to normal, and the Pacers look, honestly, even better than they did last year. Okay, like when you look at their last 11 games where they're once again 8-3, they're 5th in offensive rating at 118 points per 100 possessions. That is an elite number. And they're 18th in defensive rating at 113 points allowed per 100 possessions. That gives them the 7th best net rating in the NBA over the last 11 games. They've been the 7th best team in the NBA over the last 11 games. Okay, and it's not like they're playing a crap schedule in all of these games. Okay, like, sure, they played the 76ers and the Pelicans, but outside of that, they've played, at a minimum, super talented teams. Like, they played the Suns twice. They played the Celtics twice. Beat the Celtics, in fact. They played the Thunder, best team in the league. Okay? They played the Kings, who are uber talented. Played the Warriors, who are really good. They played the Bucks, who have been rolling. And they played the Miami Heat, who are, you want to talk about toughness. Jim Irsay should just call Pat Riley and be like, hey, man, what is toughness? And Pat Riley could probably explain it incredibly well. Okay, so there are some really good opponents in that stretch that the Pacers have beaten. Once again, 8-3 in that stretch. They're surging. They are once again an absolute joy to watch. They play tonight. I'm going to watch because it's freaking snowing outside, and I got to be honest, I hate the snow. I think it's the worst thing ever. Is a bit dramatic, but you know what I mean. Can't stand it. Once again, thanks to everyone, who's moving the snow around, making the roads drivable. If you're driving in the snow, stay safe. Okay, go home, sit on the couch, grab a beverage, read a book, and wait for the Pacers game to start tonight because they're going to play the Nets. The Nets aren't very good, and it's another game that they should win, but just because they should win doesn't mean that they will. Okay, if you watch the Colts this year, then that full-blown. Kevin Potts is set to join the show here in about 5 minutes. We're going to talk more Shane Steichen and Chris Ballard. We're going to talk a little bit of draft stuff because the Colts need an impeccable draft to really make any sort of headway because, as we all know, Chris Ballard gave that quote before the year started. This is what we believe. If it gets me fired, so be it. He's not changing his ways. It's not going to happen. So we are going to talk a little bit of draft stuff. That is Kevin's expertise. So we're going to talk what should the Colts do, what should they target, and all of those fun things. I'm really hoping that they draft Scatterbo. I am going to ask him about that because look, if the Colts draft Bo Scatterbo, then the draft is an instant success as far as I'm concerned. Kevin Potts joins the show here in about 5 minutes.
It's time for the real Jonathan Smith Show. This is Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
What's going on? The real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Thanks for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's Twitter, YouTube, 1430 AM, Indy Sports Ticket, the app. I greatly appreciate it. If you're driving on the roads, stay safe. Joining me now is Kevin Potts, writer of the Kevin Potts NFL and NFL Draft Breakdowns Substack. You can follow him on Twitter at KevinPotts06. He also has a YouTube channel that you should totally check out. Kevin, what is going on, man?
Not much, had a nice little holiday reset, and now excited to get into what looks like a pretty exciting week coming up for postseason football in both pro and college.
Yeah, the postseason, that sounds nice. We don't know what that is here in Indy anymore. It's been, 5 years now. Haven't won the division in over a decade. And the mastermind behind all that, Chris Ballard, he's back this next year. They're bringing back Steichen as well. What are kind of your thoughts on Irsay staying committed to those guys?
Man, it's got to be frustrating for Colts fans. And from an objective standpoint, I don't necessarily hate it. You asked me about a month ago. This is probably I would have guessed they would have done. I mean, you don't really have a clear option at quarterback next year other than Anthony Richardson. So keeping the support system around him, giving them all one more year together. If it doesn't work, most of your big contracts with JT and Jr., the outs come before that 2026 season. Then you can do the clean cut. But it's just really hard to sell, I think, the fan base after, like you said, haven't made the playoffs in about 5 years. It's about the same record every single year. And just the performance and the body language over the past 2 weeks, that loss to the Giants with the playoffs on the line, it's really hard to turn around, I feel, and sell a fan base and a franchise on the people in charge when you get those results, even though on paper, I understand why keeping together and running it back for another year might make sense. And I do think good thing with Ballard, his weaknesses are also the reason he's not going to sink this franchise. He's not going to overspend in free agency. He's probably not going to sink you with a draft and ruin the next steps. But it's tough going to next season thinking you're going to win another 8-9 games, and it's going to be more of the same.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm expecting. I fully expected for it to be another 8 or 9 win year, and then we'll see what kind of happens from there. You mentioned Anthony Richardson really being their only option at quarterback right now. The thing that I'm very intrigued to see is I feel like there's a lot of day 2 quarterbacks in this draft. Look, I mean, Anthony Richardson was not good this year, completing 48% of your passes. Will not cut it, no matter how deep they are down the field. What do you think the chances are they take like a Carson Beck or a Quinn Ewers on day 2?
I think you probably have to take a day 2 or day 3 quarterback. How high that goes, I'm not really sure. Like you said, there's just a bunch of round 2 type of guys in this class, but those round 2 guys are going in round 1. So you're taking round 4 guys in round 2 if you do that. And it makes for a sticky situation. I do think they probably do end up with a Dart, a Ewers, or a Beck. Hopefully it doesn't cost them a top 50, top 75 pick, and you can use maybe your 4th or 3rd on that. But I do think you have to have some sort of young competition behind Richardson, because the odds are he's probably going to miss some time and get hurt. That's what he's shown us. And instead of tossing out Joe Flacco, you would like to toss out a younger option to at least give a little bit of hope. So I do think they have to take a quarterback. Which one they take and where they take it is a very interesting question. We'll have to see how that goes down.
Yeah, because my thing is like they want to keep their jobs. I have there's not a doubt about it in my mind. Joined by Kevin Potts, writer of the Kevin Potts NFL and NFL Draft Breakdowns Substack. He also has a YouTube channel that you can go check out. Also follow him on Twitter at Kevin Potts 06. So Colts fans have been watching the college football playoff. And if you watch all the games, Tyler Warren just jumps off the screen like I think very few athletes do. Colts fans are calling for him to be the pick at 14. I don't know if they're going to do that because it's Chris Ballard and they're probably going to take an offensive tackle. But who are some of the other tight ends that the Colts could potentially grab in round 2, 3, or 4?
Well, the good thing about this class, it's a very good tight end class. And Warren might not even be the best prospect in the first round. From Michigan, Colson Loveland, who we don't see a ton of because Michigan has, but we saw him a lot in the college football class last year. might be a better player. So there's two options in the first round if they like either of those guys. And in the second round, you get to some really good players. Gunnar Helm out of Texas, you have Mason Taylor out of LSU, and Harold Fannin Jr. out of Bowling Green are like the next three that you're going to see in rounds 2 and 3. Taylor and Helm are probably the type they'd be looking at. 6'5", 250, both really good seam runners with dependable hands, something I think fits really well, especially if you do keep Anthony Richardson. There's a couple options in that 2 to 3 range. And then there's a boatload of different body types like there usually is if you get into those day 3, round 4, round 5 types.
I really like Gunnar Helm. Like physical, can kind of block, like not an absolute zero. Like you mentioned, he's really good in the pass game as well. Joined by Kevin Potts, writer of the Kevin Potts NFL and NFL Draft Breakdowns Substack. The Colts need help at safety and corner as well. In terms of safety, I think Malachi Starks out of Georgia is probably the top one. Obviously, you got Travis Hunter and Will Johnson at the top of the draft at corner. Who are some of the safeties and corners that you like in this draft?
Yeah, I mean, you listed my 3 top players in this class. It's Travis Hunter, Will Johnson, and Malachi Starks. Johnson and Hunter, I don't think are going to get to 14 just because they play corner. Starks bumped down because of the positional value safety. So I think that's actually a really good option at 14, especially if the Colts get left out of a run at a position they're looking for, because he's the very best player available that also fits a need. If you get a little bit deeper, the safety that I really like is Kevin Winston Jr. out of Penn State. I had a first-round grade coming out of the summer. I still have like run early second, late first. He tore his ACL this year, so he missed a lot of time. So I do think you could get him as a discount in more of the second or third round. Corner gets a little bit more interesting. The 2 first-round guys are Benjamin Morrison out of Notre Dame and Javon Ravel out of East Carolina. They both also suffered season-ending injuries. So there's going to be a lot of medical checks with these guys. But you have first-round tape on both of those guys, and I do think 14 is a pretty decent spot to take them. The one corner that screams a Ballard corner is Darian Porter out of Iowa State. He's generally he's 6'4", 200 pounds.
Jeez.
So you put him next to Juju Brents, and you probably have the biggest corner room since the Legion of Boom. And he has that body type that I think would really fit what the Colts will look for. We'll see who the D coordinator is going next year and what they're running. But he's probably a guy on day 2 that I think the Colts would absolutely love.
I mean, they could try to put him by Juju Brents, but Juju Brents will figure out a way to get hurt because that's just been his career so far. Speaking of defensive coordinators, anyone in mind that you like for the Colts, given the fact that they like a lot of length and size on the back end?
I mean, the one that I look at is like, do you bring Eberflus back? Because, yeah, it didn't go very well as a head coach, obviously, in Chicago, but those defenses looked pretty good. And we saw the drop-off actually for that Bears defense after he left, and it all really kind of fell apart. I still do think he is a solid D coordinator. I think you could also look at Robert Saleh. He has a lot of familiarity with that Gus Bradley system, coming from Seattle himself and San Francisco. So you're not doing a ton of overturning a lot of that talent. He's familiar with DeForest Buckner. I think those are the 2 names of the retreads, but have success at defensive coordinator in the NFL in very recent.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Joined by Kevin Potts, writer of the Kevin Potts NFL and NFL Draft Breakdowns Substack, joined to talk Colts and at some point here the NFL playoffs. So there's this college football player that everybody loves, and it's to a point with me where if the Colts draft Scatterbo, I think I would be happy. Like I wouldn't really care about anything else. What are the chances Colts grab him, and where do you kind of see him going in this draft class?
I think they could definitely pick him up. He's a really nice compliment for Taylor, an eventual successor, because I do think he fits in this run scheme well. I don't think he's going to take a crazy high pick to get. I know everyone loves him. The contact balance, the attitude, the ability to make plays in the passing game is really fun to watch. But running backs of his profile are usually about round 4 guys. He is not going to run very well at the combine. He's also very scheme specific. He's going to fit mostly in a gap scheme. He's the type of player that we all fall in love with while he's playing on the field. And then he's going to go on the combine and probably run really poorly. And he's going to drop on everyone's boards. And in reality, he's probably somewhere in the middle. If you think a Dameon Pierce, a Tyler Algier really quality players, but probably best to be in a committee with a smaller, quicker back. So I think at best, it probably is going to take a third-round pick. I'd imagine he's probably more of a fourth-rounder, and that makes it a pretty easy build. Colts can take it because you're not going to spend a premium asset. I do think he's going to be a good player. He's just probably not a game changer that requires significant investment on.
So I feel like whenever I look at people's draft boards, there's like 7 tackles in the first like top 30 rankings. Is this a tackle heavy draft? And is it deep enough that the Colts should pass on an absolute need to potentially draft a player who could play tackle in the league for the next decade or so?
They should probably be looking tackle in the first round. It's a good tackle class. It's not a great one. The top 2 are Will Campbell out of LSU, Kelvin Banks Jr. out of Texas. They would not have been in my top 4 of last year's class. I don't think there is a Joe Alt type of player in this class. Both of the guys are very good, but they also might be guards. There's a lot of good tackles that might be elite guards. I think the Peter Skoronski types in this class. So I don't think there's a player in the first round that's going to force the Colts' hand unless they really fall in love with them. The one guy that would maybe think that is Josh Simmons of Ohio State. His 2024 tape was excellent before he got hurt, but he only played about 5-6 games before suffering a season-ending injury. So that makes it really tough to really bet on him, even if he might have the best tape. So I think if they're looking towards the offensive line, you're probably looking more in the round 2, 3, and 4 types because the class is pretty good. But the top-end guys, I think, are probably get reached on by those desperate top 10 teams, and there's no real game changer that's going to change the Colts draft board, in my opinion.
Okay, that makes sense. I do want to talk a little bit about the playoffs, joined by Kevin Potts, writer of the Kevin Potts NFL and NFL Draft Breakdowns Substack. We talked a lot of Colts. We talked a little bit of draft. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the NFL playoffs. So I still don't know how I feel about this. I think I go back and forth on it. Do you like how the Chiefs are giving their players now 2 weeks off because they didn't play Week 18, and obviously they have that first round bye?
Yeah. I mean, we have this discussion in pretty much every sport about rest versus rust. I'm always a rest guy. You're obviously going to have a little bit of rest regardless when you're coming off those buys. But in a physical sport like football, I think you really heal up those guys, especially a team that has had a lot of deep postseason runs lately and played a lot of football. I think giving these older players like the Kelceys and the Chris Jones time off is the way to go. I've always said, too, if you are losing out of a bye, you probably just weren't going to win it all anyways. If your excuse is we were sitting our players down and that's why we didn't win it all, I just don't think you're a good enough team to start with. I think the benefits of letting guys get time to rest their bodies in such a long physical sport is always the way to go, even if there's a little bit of slow out of the gates in that first game.
What about the Rams? Because they did the same thing. They obviously don't have that first round bye. I like it because they've been incredibly banged up this year. What'd you think about the Rams resting their players, even though they potentially could have earned the 3 seed?
I think I would have played the players in that game just strictly because of the matchup. I think the difference between the Vikings and the Commanders is pretty significant. I think it's a bad move. Like I said, I'm fine with them resting, especially when you have some older players. But I think if I was the Rams, I probably would have tried a little bit harder in that game because I think having to host the Vikings is a way tougher matchup than having to host the Commanders. And we'll see what happens after this weekend. But looking at the matchups, I'll have some questions next week if they end up losing.
Joined by Kevin Potts, writer of the Kevin Potts NFL and NFL Draft Breakdowns Substack. You can follow him on Twitter at KevinPotts06. He's also got a nice YouTube channel going on as well. Who's kind of the sleeper team that you think could go on an unprecedented run and potentially win their conference? For me, it's the Rams. I think they're really good. Who's kind of that team for you?
Yeah, I think the Rams is a good one. The other one that I'm curious about is the Buccaneers. Now, their defense, especially that passing defense, is just not very good. But they can stop the run really well, and that offense can get really, really hot. I don't think they're close to the best team in the NFC, but when you have the playmakers and the coin flip style of quarterback that Baker Mayfield plays, I think they can get hot and win 3-4 games in a row. And we'll be looking in a couple weeks like, how did the Bucs get here? And it's because they won a couple shootouts on the back of a really good offense and maybe some opportunistic plays from a defense that still has some playmakers littered throughout it.
Last question for you, Kevin, and I will let you go. Give me a prediction who plays in the Super Bowl and who wins it.
Well, I'm always going to pick the Chiefs off the AFC side. And until they prove me wrong, I'm going to pick them to go there, and then I'm going to pick them to win it. And then I think I'm going to go with the Eagles on the NFC side. I know the Lions had that really nice win last night, but I still think there's a lot of holes on that defense, and I think that was more of the Vikings really struggling. The Vikings struggles in that game, specifically at quarterback. Give me some fears with their long-term potential. And while I don't particularly love the Eagles quarterback and Jalen Hurts, I think this roster, you could argue, has the best receivers, the best running back, the best offensive line, and the best defense. That's a pretty good argument for why they should make it out of the NFC, even if they're not a perfect team. And then I would take them losing to the Chiefs because, well, Patrick and Andy Reid just always get it done.
They do. It's kind of ridiculous how they get it done. Like it's almost, I'm not going to say not fun because I'm going to watch every single game and have a blast doing it, but it's just like feels inevitable, but at some point, like they're bound to lose. Do you think that they'd be more likely to lose to the Bills or the Ravens this year?
I think it's the Ravens. I think you look at their resume. I think they've played 10 playoff teams over the course of the season. They have obviously been battle tested. They're 3-time MVP in Lamar Jackson. When they've played against those playoff teams, they've scored a ton of points. Their defense has looked really good since Kyle Hamilton moved back to safety. If there's ever a team and ever a year to do it, I think it's going to be Baltimore this year.
Okay. I don't know. Josh Allen's been so good. I don't know. We'll see. I'm not picking.
It's a great counterpoint.
Yeah. I mean, but then again, Lamar Jackson, he's at 41 touchdowns on the year and only 4 interceptions, and he's been out of his mind as well. I don't know. I'm not picking either one of them to beat the Chiefs, but we'll see. Kevin, thanks for your time, man.
Yeah, always a pleasure.
See ya. That is Kevin Potts. Follow him on Twitter at KevinPotts06. He's the man. He does a really good job writing up all these different draft reports. It's kind of crazy, everything that he does. So make sure you go and check out his stuff. When we come back here in about 4 minutes, we will continue the conversation discussing the Indianapolis Colts and the end of their season.
Often imitated, never duplicated. The real Jonathan Smith Show. This is Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
The real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Thanks for tuning in no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Twitter, the Indy Sports Ticket app. Maybe you're driving around, listening via 1430 AM. Appreciate it no matter how you are listening. If you are driving around, be safe. Don't get into an accident because that would not be good. Colts season was not good. It is over. They finished under 500, 8-9 on the season after a big win yesterday over division foe Jacksonville, 26-3 in overtime. Once again, 8-9, pretty average. I thought that they'd finish 10-7, so I was kind of close. But after watching this team, the first 4 weeks of the season, this feels like the correct record for the Colts when you look at the schedule and everything. Sometimes teams will finish better or finish with better or worse records than they actually should. For example, like the Rams don't seem like they should be 10-7. The Chiefs don't seem like they should be 15-2. The Chiefs should probably be like 12-5, and the Rams should probably be like 11-6, And I think there were multiple things that played into the failure that was this Indianapolis Colts season. And obviously, we have to start with the most important position on the field when we talk about the struggles from the Colts this year, and that's Anthony Richardson. He missed 6 games this year. In the 11 that he played, he wasn't great. Had some flashes. We'll always have that Jets game. But he clearly needs to improve. Okay, completing 48% of your passes isn't good enough at any level. Okay, if you're a middle school quarterback and you complete 48% of your passes, someone's going to take your spot, man. Okay, his yards per attempt was solid at 7, especially when you consider that he completed less than half of his passes this year. He averaged 165 passing yards a game, threw 8 touchdowns, not enough, 12 interceptions, way too many, and that's just not good enough as a passer to last in the NFL. The one thing that he did do well was run the ball, right? Ran for 499 yards, averaged 6 yards a carry, ran for 6 touchdowns. That's nice. But he's got a back issue that he's apparently had for a decade. So that's problematic for a guy that wants to physically run the football. He's going to have to learn how to win games from the pocket, and he's simply nowhere close to doing that yet. So if you just want to take, I'm not called the easy road, but the most obvious reason as to why the Colts were 8-9 this year is because Anthony Richardson was not good enough. In the games that Joe Flacco played, he wasn't good enough. The Colts were 2-4 in the games that Joe Flacco started this year. He beat the Titans, and he went 1-1 against the Jacksonville Jaguars. So the quarterback play from the Colts this year, whether it be Joe Flacco or Anthony Richardson, was clearly nowhere near good enough for them to finish with a winning record. In addition to that issue, the defense, the genius that is Gus Bradley has just continued his run of disappointing seasons. Okay, the Colts defense finished at the bottom of the NFL in every important thing. They were 29th in yards allowed, 26th in points allowed, 19th in red zone touchdown percentage allowed at 60%. They were 31st in third down defense. And this was all with outstanding turnover luck. They were 8th in the NFL this year in takeaways per game. When you're 8th in the NFL at forcing teams to turn the football over, you should not be 8-9. Of the top 10 teams in the NFL in terms of takeaways per game, the Colts were the only team that did not have a winning record. And they were one of 2 teams, the other one being the Bengals, that did not make the playoffs. When you have turnover luck at the level that the Indianapolis Colts did, you should hold your opponents to way less points than the 25.5 that the Colts gave up on average this season. 6 of the top 10 teams in takeaways were also in the top 10 in points allowed, which makes sense because usually if you lessen the number of possessions that the opposition has, then they should score less points. The Bengals ranked below the Colts in points allowed. They were 26th. The Colts were 25th. The next closest team to the Colts in points allowed was the Houston Texans, who were 16th. when you're top 10 in the NFL in turnovers, there is no excuse to not at least be average in terms of points allowed per game. There is absolutely no excuse whatsoever for this Colts defense to have been this bad this year with this level of turnover luck. Okay, Gus Bradley needs to go. And a lot of these players need to go as well. Only one of those two things is likely going to happen. I fully expect for Gus Bradley to be fired. It may have already happened, and I missed it. I'm kind of waiting for that news to come through because he's clearly going to be the scapegoat this season. Clearly. Okay? I'm just kind of waiting for that news to drop because we all know that it's going to happen here at some point. Okay? After the game, Colts finishing at 8-9 once again, Joe Flacco was asked an outstanding question of how close are the Indianapolis Colts to making the playoffs, and Joe Flacco gave what I thought to be an excellent response.
Ton of plays you could probably look at and say, you could probably pick 5 plays and say, that's how close we are. But then you could also probably do the same thing in the other direction and say, but yeah, we could have, there's always that back and forth. There's a reason that, you kind of finish around this area. I think when you ultimately just become better, then those things start to go in your favor because if you looked at it right now, there's just probably a lot of 50-50 things. For the one that we could have had, there's another one that we couldn't have had. So we just need to change that balance a little bit. And the only way to really do that is to get a little bit better. I think it's a lot like a lot of stats and all those things that are brought up today. I think you can kind of manipulate it into saying, oh, we were so close, or, oh, we weren't, however you want to put it, we weren't that far away. But it's being able to look at the different things and the ins and outs of those and really dissect what the issue was. That's the thing with analytics these days. I think, especially when you're, 8-9? When you're 8-9, there's probably a ton of spots where you could look and convince yourself that we were almost there. I don't necessarily think that's the right mindset. I don't think we should be trying to trick ourselves into thinking that we're almost there. I think we should acknowledge, yeah, we are almost there, but we're not there. And I think when you acknowledge that, you free yourself up to get better and take that next step.
Joe Flacco right there talking about the Colts being close to making the playoffs. And I love what he said. How first and foremost, like if you're just better, then, you don't have to worry about things going one way or the other. Those things just kind of take care of themselves. I also like how at the end, he talked about how the last thing that the Colts should do is just look at all the things that could have gone their way, right? Because that's like a reality for every team in the NFL. All these games are close. Okay, there's usually 3 or 4 plays every game that decide whether or not you are going to win. And he's exactly right. The best way to, have those 3 or 4 plays go in your direction is to just be better. Okay, like the only way to not be 8-9 or 9-8 again is just to get better. And we all know what's coming. The press conferences. We're going to hear repeatedly how close the Colts were this offseason. It is undoubtedly going to happen. And when it's said, I fully believe that this stat is going to be used in part of the defense. The Colts played 13 one-score games this year. They went 8-5 in those games. And you'll hear that if the ball had bounced their way in 2 of the 5, then they'd be in the playoffs. And you probably hear that if Jonathan Taylor hadn't dropped the football before crossing the goal line against the Broncos, that they'd probably be in the playoffs. But let's just be honest here. I'm not dumb, and neither are you. We watched the games. Colts aren't close to the best teams in the NFL. They are nowhere near it. Sure, they're like on the brink of making the playoffs. That's fine. Okay, but I don't want the Colts to make the playoffs. I want them to legitimately compete for a title. And, you're going to hear Ballard and Steichen say, if you make the playoffs, anything can happen. Yeah, but not really. If anyone other than the Lions, Chiefs, Bills, Ravens, Vikings, or Eagles, probably the 6 best teams in the NFL. If anyone outside of those 6 win at all, everyone will be surprised because the truth of the matter is that anything can't happen. Okay, one of those 6 teams, maybe the Rams, are going to bring it home. Okay? Like there's a clear gap between the best teams in the playoffs and the teams that snuck in. So sure, Colts are close to the Broncos and the Texans and the Buccaneers and the Steelers. That shouldn't be the standard. Barely making the playoffs should not be the standard. The standard should be Super Bowls. And the Colts are nowhere close to that. The close losses might tell you that they are. But the blowout losses to the Bills and the Lions and the Giants tell you that they aren't anywhere close. Losing to the Malik Willis-led Green Bay Packers tells you that the Colts are not close. The fact that the Colts didn't blow anybody out this year, all 8 of their wins were by 1 score. That tells you that they aren't anywhere close to competing for titles and to making the playoffs. Okay, they are once again a product of a pretty soft schedule that will be tough for next year because they finished second in the division as opposed to third like they did last year. Okay, they are not close. So when they try to throw you that BS this year, ignore it because it's just not true. Okay, we're running it back 9-8, 8-9. That's what the Colts are probably going to be next season unless some major dramatic things happen. Like Chris Ballard's going to have the draft of a lifetime if the Colts are going to be better than 9-8 next year. Okay? Like they're going to have some rookies show up and really go crazy. Okay? It's so incredibly frustrating. And to make it worse, Jim Irsay wrote this letter that I'm going to read when we come back here in like 4 minutes.
The Real Jonathan Smith Show. This is Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
What's going on? It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Thanks for tuning in, no matter how you are tuning in. Oh, man. What a day. What a weekend. Just rolling along here. Just an outstanding show today. I will pat myself on the back. And we're going to continue talking about the Indianapolis Colts and just this absolutely horrendous season that they just wrapped up. And it's completely and totally unacceptable. And it just kind of feels like Jim Irsay is just spitting in our face right now. Just like, yeah, I don't really care. Sorry, guys. He wrote this letter. And, you know, it's just a load of crap. Listen to this. Jim Irsay says, "Dear Colts fans, as we close out the season, I can't tell you how disappointed I am that we failed to win the AFC South and earn a playoff appearance. There's a high standard in this city for our team and anyone who steps on the field wearing the horseshoe. The expectation is to win our division and compete for championships, which the Colts haven't done in a decade. Just being on the doorstep of the playoffs is not the standard I expect, nor what you deserve. Even though we've had this for the last 5 years, he still doesn't want to make a change. We understand that and always accept that challenge." Okay, buddy. Believe me, I know you share my impatience and frustration. I promise you that we don't. Because if we did, then Ballard wouldn't be here anymore. I know you invest your time, energy, and money into the Colts every year. More than anything, we want to reward you with division titles and playoff runs, and we've fallen short in the most painful ways possible. But things evolve quickly in the NFL from week to week and season to season. Colts have not evolved at all under Chris Ballard, but okay. So I will never stop being optimistic that this team can take the next step. I've been evaluating our entire operation, and I believe in Chris Ballard and Shane Steichen and our collective ability to make the improvements needed to take us to the next level in 2025. I know fans who want an immediate change in leadership will be disappointed. That means we all have a lot to prove. So we'll get back to work and keep doing what we can to earn your support and make you a proud Colts fan. Yeah, no, you won't. You guys are going to be so incredibly bad. That's just the reality of it. Okay, like they're going to go 8-9 or 9-8 again because that is who the Indianapolis Colts are. They are now on the same tier, maybe even above teams like the Bears and the Panthers and the Jets and the Browns and the Giants and the Raiders. Those are arguably the worst run organizations in the NFL, and the Colts should be grouped with them. They, in fact, might be ran worse. Jim Irsay and the Colts, you know, everyone who runs that organization, have sat idly by while the Colts have just peddled in mediocrity. I mean, it's the same thing year in and year out. Meanwhile, these other teams have actually made attempts to be good. Like the Bears, they made an awesome trade and they now have a franchise quarterback and a soon to be new head coach. The Panthers have a pretty decent young head coach that I like, right? Panthers go from winning two games last year to 5 games this year. Bryce Young emerging, might be good. They scored 44 points the other day or yesterday. The Jets have at least tried to be good. They went out and they tried to add Aaron Rodgers. They added a bunch of good defensive pieces in free agency. Like the Jets just get in their own way, but there are at least attempts to be good. And then something catastrophic just kind of happens to them. The Browns took a huge swing on Deshaun Watson. It didn't pan out, but at least they're trying. Then you got the Giants and the Raiders this year who are about to draft potential franchise quarterbacks in Cam Ward and Shadur Sanders. Okay, so they're all out here at least making attempts. Meanwhile, the Colts are like the earth. Okay, they just spin on their Chris Ballard-centered axis of drafting average edge rushers, elite offensive guards, and avoiding making a decision at quarterback until it is far too late. So they spin around this Chris Ballard-centered axis, and then they move around the sun of mediocrity, which is a 9-8, 8-9 record. And every 365 days, we make a full rotation. And the Colts, they celebrate the year of mediocrity by wearing party hats that say we're so close. Because they are so close. They were 2 games away from making the playoffs. If Jonathan Taylor doesn't drop the football before crossing the goal line, then maybe, just maybe, they get in. We're so close. That is the new official slogan of the Indianapolis Colts, right? Like Chris Ballard, Shane Steichen, they're going to go to the podium. Chris Ballard's going to make an attempt to turn on the charm. Hey guys, we're really close. I have faith in these guys. Trust me, I'm just as disappointed as you are. Well, here's the truth, Chris Ballard. Fans are not disappointed. They are legitimately upset because it's just the same thing over and over and over again. Just this revolving door. Okay? And then, he's going to say, we're disappointed, but we really feel like we made some strides in the right direction. Anthony Richardson, man, he had some pretty good flashes. Like we're going to hear about all of that, right? And then from there, Chris Ballard's going to be like, our scouts have been working really hard. I think there's some good players in this draft class who can really help us, and so on. Like that's like we're going to hear all of that, okay? Just for us to wind up in this spot next year. Okay, so for those who aren't watching on YouTube or on Twitter, I have a party hat that my wife made because my wife's a teacher and she's good at stuff like that. And it says we're so close on it. And I'm going to keep it. And next year at around this time, when the Colts go 8-9 again or 9-8, and they say that they're so close, I'm going to put it on again. It's going to be great. Okay, so tune in next year, I guess. Right, but this is just who the Colts are. This is where we're going to be next year. Unless something dramatic happens. Unless Chris Ballard puts together just an absurd draft class. And Anthony Richardson makes not like strides, like big-time leaps. Okay, he was not good this year. I have defended him probably more than anybody else because the tools are clearly there and the flashes are awesome. Okay, but the consistency is not there and he's still incredibly immature. Okay, but there's some hope. Okay, something big can happen. Will it? Probably not. But let's just be honest here. The Colts have to have the draft of a lifetime because we all know that Chris Ballard is not going to build through free agency. To quote him from before the year started, this is what we believe. If it gets me fired, so be it. His words. Okay, so if you think that we're going to see any sort of adjustment and strategy, we will not. Okay, the Colts are going to have to draft another running back because they desperately need depth at running back. They're going to have to draft a couple more offensive linemen because they need depth at the offensive line, especially if Ryan Kelly isn't going to come back, even though I think that he should. They got to draft a safety because Julian Blackmon wasn't very good this year, even though he had the best training camp ever. They need a new corner because Juju Brent can't stay on the field. They need a new linebacker. Get Zaire Franklin out of town. They need a dominant edge rusher, which could be fixed if Leatu Latu develops. And I just don't know how all those things happen unless the Colts put together a perfect offseason. Okay, the Colts would have to draft a good running back, which isn't hard. There are a lot of them in this draft. They'd have to hit free agency, so you can just throw a good offseason out the window because Chris Ballard is not going to do that. But they'd have to go to free agency to add guaranteed depth on the offensive line. Then they'd have to hit on picks at safety, corner, and linebacker. They could also get those in free agency, but that won't happen. Then Leatu Latu would have to improve. Now, I would argue that he had a pretty solid rookie season. Okay, when you look at pass rush win rate and pressure and quarterback hits and knockdowns and all of those things, but the sacks weren't there, and I know ultimately that that's what fans care about, and that's really what makes a larger impact on the game, right? Either way, he definitely didn't live up to the we got the best pass rusher in the draft expectations that Chris Ballard set before him before the season started. Okay, and what's crazy is all of those things could happen. Okay, Chris Ballard could have the draft of a lifetime. Leatu Latu could come back as Dwight Freeney. And it wouldn't matter if Anthony Richardson didn't get better and if he doesn't grow up. Also, if he does get better and he does grow up, then none of that other stuff matters. Okay, now I could never be an NFL general manager for a lot of reasons. I think I'd just be too good at it. Where I would get bored, But the truth is, I would never want to be because of the situation that Chris Ballard is in right now, which, to be fair, he put himself in this spot. You know, you start off as like this lowly scout and you work your way up and you're grinding and you fight your way through the ranks to eventually be an NFL general manager, right? That is what Chris Ballard has done. Now he sits in a position where the future of his career rests in the hands of a 22-year-old with maturity issues. Not a spot that I would want to be in at all. Okay? Things have to get better, specifically with Anthony Richardson. And I just don't see things getting better. Like, why would things get better after 9 years of the exact same thing? Okay? Now, where I could see things getting better is with Shane Steichen. Okay? He's going into his third year as a head coach. He's got the offseason to reflect. And there are like some pretty clear things that he could be better at. Okay? And he has to be better. No more crazy trick plays in big spots, please. No more not having your best players on the field in big spots. No more trying to save Jonathan Taylor until late in the year. Look, if you use him early and you win a lot of games, you can do what the Chiefs did and rest him in week 18 before the playoffs. Okay? Most importantly, though, the thing that he has to do is get players to buy in. He has to get Zaire Franklin to stop saying stupid things on his podcast. He has to get Zaire Franklin to not walk over to Pat McAfee's box on the field and fake handshake all of their hands. They weren't there yesterday. There's a video on Twitter if you want to go find it. Like that is unacceptable behavior from your captain. Okay? And he has to find a way to make the players on this team better, because the chances of Chris Ballard, drafting great players is pretty slim. Now, look, I've seen him help players improve. I saw him do it this year with Alec Pierce. Here's Shane Steichen after the game yesterday talking about Alec Pierce and his development from last year to this year.
I mean, really improved. I'll tell you what, the plays he made down the field, obviously a big one there, 3rd and 10 in the overtime, just a little sideline play to him, going up and getting it. Made some big times and clutch moments for us this year.
Shane Steichen right there talking about Alec Pierce and just the improvements that he's made. And look, he had the best year of his career for 2 reasons, Alec Pierce. One, because Shane Steichen figured out a way to get him the football doing the thing that he does best, run deep. Okay, Shane Steichen figured out a way to scheme up deep shots to Alec Pierce, because that's where he's at his best. He runs like a 4.3, and he's like 6'4", okay? Like, let him run and go get the football, right? That is something Shane Steichen did well this year, okay? The other reason why Alec Pierce was better is because Alec Pierce put the work in over the offseason, okay? I remember him doing interviews during training camp, and people were asking him very fair questions of, like, are you worried about A.D. Mitchell? You guys play the same position. They took him in the 2nd round. Like, that's a high-value draft pick. Are you worried about this? He was like, nah. A.D. Mitchell, good player, learning some things from him, trying to help him out, but I'm not really worried. And it was because he put in a lot of work in the offseason to improve and to get better. And that has to happen for the rest of these Colts players. Anthony Richardson has to put in the work in the offseason to get better. A.D. Mitchell has to put in the work in the offseason to get better. Shane Steichen can do whatever he wants, but if guys don't put in the work, none of it matters. Here's Anthony Richardson today talking about the things that he learned after year 1.
What are your takeaways from year 2 in the league?
Like I talked about, the other day, adversity. You need that, especially in this league, just to, fine-tune, certain things, especially on the field, but just off the field as well. Just learning the NFL, just in general, learning the aspects of everything, and just learning how to be better. And I feel like adversity is the thing that gives us a chance to, deliver that. So I definitely learned a lot about adversity.
What's the biggest thing you improved on with learning through all that throughout this season and going through that adversity?
I think being intentional, honestly, because sometimes, you do something for so long, it's like, okay, that's routine, that's natural. But, like, okay, I can do that with my eyes closed. But to get better, I feel like you have to, be intentional about every single thing you're doing every minute of the day. You can't just let it just fly by because, you've been doing it for so long. So I think just being intentional, that's something I definitely learned about this year. or this past season. I'm definitely looking forward to this year, just being intentional about every single thing, no matter what.
Jeez, Anthony Richardson answering questions about where he felt like he got better and what he learned. And, he has some decent things in there, talking about adversity and how that's important and how you can grow through that. And then he talks about, intentionality. And I just, dude, obviously, duh. Like, if you weren't intentional with the work that you put in anything, like, you're not going to get better. Like, it's just not going to happen at all. And I just, what a terrible response. Child. That's what he is. Okay. To backwards hats, to tapping out of games early, to not realizing that you have to be intentional to get better. Like, come on, man. I get it. He's 22. Okay. But I don't know the people around him or the people that he grew up with. But when you hear statements like that, I'm just like, the people at Florida did not help him. Like, intentionality, really? Like, that's the thing that you learned? I learned that my freshman year of high school from my high school baseball coach. Like, obviously you have to be intentional. It's just, I don't know. 8-9, 9-8, maybe. We'll see. It's not going to be very good. Okay. Like, it's just, is not going to happen. Geez, Anthony, I had a good show today. I was in a good mood. I was ready to roll into, the Dan Dockett show where he's going to have a lot of thoughts and, in a pretty decent mood. And I played that. And now I'm just in a sour mood. That's just, thanks for ruining my day, Anthony Richardson. Jeez Louise. Thank you for tuning into the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Hopefully you had an enjoyable time listening. I'll be back on the air again tomorrow from 10 to noon. The Dan Dockett Show starts up at noon. Drive safe on the roads, and I'll talk to you tomorrow starting at 10.